Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about love and relationships poetry, and I'm going to be providing you with a guide, summary and analysis to Porphyria's Lover. Before we get going, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are plenty of things on the channel to help you revise for English literature and English language. Okay, my guide to Porphyria's Lover. So it's written by Robert Browning. There's a picture of him there. He's got a wonderful throat beard, but that made him very depressed. He wanted a normal beard like a normal man, but no hair would grow upon his face. Lucky for him, he found this wonderful young lady, Elizabeth Barrett, who became his wife, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and she wrote poetry for him, which made him very cheerful. And the depression that he was suffering for not being able to grow a proper beard like a normal person dissipated, and they lived happily ever after. Of course, very little of that is true, but let's find out now what the poem is about, which is what we really need to know. So Porphyria's Lover is the speaker in the poem, which is a dramatic monologue. He tells us about his lover, who he may have been in a secret love affair with, coming to visit him on a cold and bitter evening. Porphyria looks upon him entirely devoted to him. She's perfect and beautiful, and he wants to capture this moment forever somehow. So he wraps her hair around her throat, strangles her to death, and then sits up all night with her body. The poem explores how love can be a powerful and destructive force, and explores feelings of possession and obsession. So quick read of the poem from me, and then after that we're going to think about analysis and what we need to do for the exam. Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning. The rain set early in tonight, but the sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break, and glided in Porphyria straight. She shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves untied, her hat, and let the damp hair fall. And last she sat down by my side, and called me when no voice replied. She put my arm around her waist, and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced. And stooping made my cheek lie there, and spread over all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me. She too weak for all her heart's endeavour to set its struggling passion free, from pride and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her and all in vain. So she was come through wind and rain. Be sure I looked up at her eyes, happy and proud. At last I knew Porphyria worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew, while I debated what to do. That moment she was mine, fair, perfectly pure and good. I found a thing to do, and all her hair in one long yellow string I wound three times her little throat around, and strangled her. No pain felt she, I am quite sure she felt no pain, as a shut bud that holds a bee. I warily oped her lids again, laughed the blue eyes without a stain. And I untightened next the tress about her neck, her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. I propped her head up as before, only this time my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon it still, the smiling rosy little head, so glad it has its utmost will, that all is scorned at once is fled, and I, its love, am gained instead. Porphyria's love, she guessed not how her darling one would wish be heard, and thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word. Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning. So now let's think about how we're going to structure our response in the exam. So whatever you're going to write about in the exam, your first paragraph tells us how your two poems relate to the theme named in the question. Tell us what they're both about, but be concise. Here's an example of that for Porphyria's Lover. Porphyria's Lover is a dramatic monologue spoken by Porphyria's lover following his murder of her. He strangled her to death in order to preserve and possess her devotion, youth and beauty. The poem explores strong feelings of love, but also how love can be a destructive force. The obsessive and possessive nature of the speaker drives him to violence. After we've done that, we're then going to talk about the structure in each of our poems, which can be done in one paragraph. So here is an example of analysis of the rhyme scheme and metre in Porphyria's Lover. The A-B-A-B-B rhyme scheme creates moments of intensity to create tension. The use of iambic tetrameter, which stitches the poem together, makes the killing seem like it's justified somehow by the speaker, who has no deviation from his thoughts or feelings, which might be the reason for the choice of regular meter. The poem is a dramatic monologue, and the fact that it's one single stanza emphasises the lack of empathy Porphyria's lover has when he recalls her murder, without the reflection or remorse a break in stanza might have suggested. And that takes us to thinking about the language in the poem. You only really need to know 3 or 4 quotes from each of the poems that you're going to be writing about. You might underline and annotate every single line of your anthology, but that's not really necessary. You're only going to comment on 3 or 4 quotes from each poem that you choose and analyse them thoroughly. So here are 4 key quotes for the poem. We thought about what the poem's about and the structure of it. Now let's think about those key quotes. So we've got the sullen wind was soon awake. That's right at the beginning of the poem, and it could be seen as a metaphor for his dark feelings and his stirring violent desires. And strangled her, no pain felt she. The speaker seems unable to empathise or feel guilt or remorse, and the use of caesura here reflects his matter-of-fact approach to her murder. His obsession with Porphyria transcends her death. We've got this wonderful simile here as a shut bud that holds a bee. So comparing her to a bee could suggest maybe that he's like the flower and she's using him to nourish himself. Using him to nourish herself, rather. She might have had another lover, perhaps. Maybe he could have been stung. Maybe it's jealousy that's been a driving factor that's led to her murder. And right at the end note of the poem, and yet God has not said a word. Perhaps he's justifying his actions here, but also maybe taunting the reader. He's got no regrets and now feels as if he owns Porphyria forever in her state of death, where he has frozen her in time. Now, if you want to take it further, here's 4 things you need to do. So, questions for you to answer in full sentences to aid your revision. Who's the speaker and what is their frame of mind in the poem? What are the key uses of language in the poem and what do they communicate? So you should be able to recall those 4 key quotes that we've looked at today. They are important to commit to your memory. What structure does the poem have and what effect does this have? And what ideas about love does the poem communicate? Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask for something you'd like to see me cover in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share and keep revising.